And we continue at 107 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios, where the actual blackjack and video blackjack is offered all over. Love to play both. Mr. Randy Wiggs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, it takes a special kind of man like Rob Bonta to take an ass-kissing of Holly Mitchell and turn it into a bucket full of cliches.
That's what we do. We respond to the challenges and take action. Thanks to the leadership of Supervisor Mitchell and all the folks here with me today, we are acting. We are doing.
That's all he knows how to do.
Every speech, every press conference, every interview, it is nothing but generic crap.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, I don't mean to be morbid on this Jimmy Buffett Friday, Randy, but I'll tell you something that always has stuck in my mind. And that is, you look to your parents and your grandparents and your aunts and your uncles for various health situations that you might have to face in the future. We know certain things are hereditary. We know, for example, that if your parents have light hair, you're likely to have light hair. If your parents have light eyes, you're likely to have light eyes. If your parents are tall, you're likely to be tall. So on and so forth. And it works that way with diseases, too. My dad had a massive heart attack at the age of 64 and survived it. My grandpa had a massive heart attack at the age of 64 and did not survive it. And my uncle passed away of a massive stroke at the age of 64. So let me tell you, when I turn 64, I'm going to wrap myself in bubble wrap every time I leave the house. That seems to be the magic number for my family. And it's always a good idea if your parents have skin cancer to make sure you take preventative measures like put the sunblock on whenever you're out in the sun. If your parents have certain types of colon cancer, you go in and you get the colonoscopy checked to see if you can catch things early if and when you have something that needs to be addressed. For other families, it's other issues. If you are a member of the Kennedy family and you are in public life, my guess would be something that sticks out in your head as something you need to keep an eye out for is political assassination. I don't think there is any family in the United States that's been more impacted by political assassination than the Kennedy family. John F. Kennedy Jr. was the president when he was assassinated in Texas while he was sitting in the back of that car during a parade. You had Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Attorney General turned U.S. Senator turned candidate for president, who was assassinated right here in Los Angeles as he was competing in the California Democratic primary. While not an assassination, you've had some untimely deaths in that family as well, including Joe Kennedy, who was the first one who was supposed to be president, who died in the war, World War II. And then you have John F. Kennedy Jr., who died in a plane crash when he was in the plane with his wife, and I believe it was his wife's sister, and they were on their way to Massachusetts. If I were a Kennedy, suffering an untimely death, specifically from assassination, would be something that would be on my mind. This cycle, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a candidate for the presidency. First, he was running in the Democratic primary. Then he decided to drop out of the Democratic primary and run for president as an independent. We've seen poll after poll after poll after poll showing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an independent, pulling in Ross Perot types of numbers. It doesn't look like he's going to win the election. He may not even win any delegates. But if you pull in the teens, you could tip the balance in November and prevent one candidate from winning as a spoiler. Certainly Joe Biden probably loses sleep over that every time he thinks about it. And because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is top of mind and in the news and making political speeches and weighing in on the political topics of the day, all of the nuts out there who are obsessed with the Kennedy family have him on their radar. It wasn't that long ago, in fact, right here in Los Angeles, last month, an armed man accused of impersonating a U.S. Marshal was taken into custody at a Kennedy campaign event here in L.A. Adrian Paul Aspuro, 44 years old, was charged with carrying a loaded firearm, carrying a concealed weapon, and for impersonating an officer. The Kennedy campaign submitted formal requests for Secret Service protection, and the Biden administration refused his request. They will not provide him with a security detail as he campaigns for president. Recently, yesterday, an intruder was arrested, I guess it was Wednesday, 2 days ago, at the Brentwood home of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The suspect was released from custody and later returned to the residence where he was again arrested. The initial incident was reported at 9:30 in the morning after the intruder climbed a fence and asked to see the candidate, according to the campaign. The man was detained by employees of Gavin DeBecker and Associates, which is a private security company that Kennedy has had to hire because he won't get Secret Service protection. Los Angeles police officers responded to the residence and took the suspect into custody. He was then transported to the West LA station where he was cited and, of course, Randy, immediately released.
Zero bail, LA County.
Immediately after being released from police custody, the man returned to Kennedy's residence and was arrested yet again. The candidate was home at the time of both arrests, according to the campaign. Kennedy's wife, the actress Cheryl Hines from Curb Your Enthusiasm, was also home at the time of the incidents. The second intrusion occurred at 5:45 p.m., despite a restraining order against the suspect. No injuries were reported. As you look at this, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, we like to talk about Joe Biden as being Grampy Joe because the guy is senile. Every day he's falling upstairs. He's inventing quotes from movies that don't exist.
He's a lion, dog-faced pony soldier.
He's giving out websites that aren't websites at all.
Visit vaccines.gov. Vaccines.gov.
So he seems like a befuddled, old, confused man.
Excuse me.
But I don't believe it's Grampy Joe calling the shots. Grampy Joe is eating his applesauce and tapioca pudding, watching Judge Judy and reruns of Matlock, and going to bed very early because he likes to go to sleep.
And then we went to sleep.
And it's other people in the White House that are running the operation. People who are more politically savvy than him, people who do not want to lose their grasp of power, people who have ideas on how the government should be run, people who are enriching themselves and their family members. And Grampy Joe is just the figurehead. He's just the guy at the top of the food chain who gets to wear the suit and show up to the events, but has no real control of what's going on. And according to all the polls, Grampy Joe would lose if the election were today. He'd lose in a variety of scenarios. He'd lose head-to-head against Donald Trump. He would lose in a three-way race between him, Donald Trump, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And he would definitely lose in a four-way race between Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Cornel West, who is looking at running as the anti-war candidate. There isn't a scenario that exists right now where Joe Biden wins the election. Now, There's a lot of time between now and when we vote, so anything could happen. But right now, the prospects don't look good for Grampy Joe. But being hit from all sides is something that is causing his numbers to drop like a stone. Trump's hitting him from the right. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is hitting him from the left. Cornel West is hitting him from the far left. He now has a primary challenger, a congressman from Minnesota, Dean Phillips. He's hitting him in the primary. Joe is taking incoming fire from all sides. And all the people around him who need him to win to stay in power understand that this isn't good. And I think they are literally willing to do anything to keep control of power. Anything. Whatever it takes, they're willing to do it, because if Grampy Joe loses the election, they're out of a job. They don't get to work at the White House. They don't get to travel on Air Force One. They don't get those neat M&Ms that they serve on the plane. All of that goes away overnight. The carriage turns into a pumpkin at midnight on January the 20th, 2025. So, you have to find a way to make sure that the threats to your power are eliminated. Look what they're trying to do to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is polling better against Joe Biden than any other Republican. Not even close. Better than Ron DeSantis, better than Nikki Haley, better than all of them. So what are they trying to do to him? They're trying to put him in jail. Let's get him out of the way. What can we do? Oh, yeah, we control the Department of Justice. Let's put our political opponent in prison. Next thing you know, Joe will be wearing sunglasses in the official portrait.
He does have really nice aviators.
Oh, yes. Just imagine if he gets to wear those, will they do the portrait, and maybe you can put a hat on him like the guy from Afghanistan, the one that looks like it's from In-N-Out Burger. You can put some medals all over his chest. That would be a smart look.
All kidding aside.
And then you've got the Kennedy problem. What do you do about Kennedy? I don't think it's an accident that they are not giving him Secret Service protection. I really don't. You know how much money this government wastes on stupid stuff that we don't need? Billions of dollars. Literally, billions of dollars. To spend money to protect a candidate who's running for president, whose family has been hit hard by political assassination, that is a drop in the bucket. That is loose change. That is almost nothing. It would cost the government such a small amount of money that no one would even notice it on a spreadsheet to keep that man protected. If he were to be assassinated or something bad were to happen to him as he were to campaign for the presidency, that would be awful, not only for him, his family, and his friends, but it would be awful for the country. Think back to the 1960s when all the assassinations were taking place, whether it was JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. They tried it on George Wallace and failed. A lot of political assassinations. The country was not in a healthy place when that happened. You do not want the nuts to be able to do bad things to the political candidates. If you don't like what someone's saying, you beat them in the battlefield of ideas. You beat them at the ballot box. You don't throw them in prison, and you don't deny them security so they get killed. That's not how you're supposed to operate in a democracy. But that's what they're doing. And then you add in the extra factor, which is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. happens to live in Los Angeles County, which means that George Gascon is the one who is ultimately responsible for prosecuting the people who are breaking into his home or showing up at his events with loaded guns.
Quite frankly,
which means Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is toast. Zero chance if I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and running for president and not given Secret Service protection, I live in George Gascon's Los Angeles. Wouldn't do it. How long do you give it before they let this guy out another time? Maybe they already have. I don't know. But he's going to receive no protection from any of the local authorities here in Los Angeles County. None. He's not going to get any security from the feds. He's not going to get any security from the local authorities. If he wants security, he has to go pay for it himself, which is what he's doing. Gavin DeBecker, by the way, is the one who's also in charge of security for Jeff Bezos. So you know that he's going to one of these firms that deals with high-end sorts of people. So here's my question to you right now at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. If you're Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you have had multiple security threats at your home and at your campaign events. The Biden White House will not give you Secret Service protection. Would you live in George Gascon's Los Angeles, or would you take a break through the campaign? I wouldn't live here through the campaign. Maybe after the campaign, that would be fine. But not during the campaign when you're on TV every day and you're top of mind for all the lunatics out there. If something bad happens to him, George Gascon will be the guy who's looking the other way. What say you? If you were Robert F. Kennedy Jr., would you reside in George Gascon's Los Angeles this presidential race? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen at 3:01 or 3:02 or 11 o'clock at night or tomorrow or Sunday, that's easy to do.
That's right, because we've got a podcast version of this show. Go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the podcasts. Easier way than that is go into the KABC app, search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. Best way to listen live to this station. Whenever you're outside the AM radio signal, the stream works everywhere around the world. And then, of course, the podcast, which you can listen to on your phone, you can listen to in your car. And, in fact, you can travel back in time with a podcast. You can go back to a time when Larry Elder was running for president.
Well, John, as I've told you before, unless Joe Biden can can screw up a mirror.
Larry!
You're on the freaking radio!
I said screw up.
And, Randy, we're going on the road next month.
That's right. We're going to be at the Gelson's West L.A. at West Edge on the corner of Olympic and Bundy, Friday, November 17th, 3 weeks from today. That market, by the way, opens Wednesday, November 1st. Brand new, gorgeous Gelson's for the West Side. Come see us, hang out. We're going to be drinking at the wine bar, having a good time. Friday, November 17th from noon to 3 at the Gelson's West L.A. at West Edge.
Let's go to Dave and Whittier. Dave, you're on KABC. Welcome.
Hello, guys. This is the on the pale. Robert F. Kennedy should move from LA County. This is absolutely insane. It just shows you the depravity of Biden and his party. Janice Hahn should be speaking up against what Biden is doing, not giving Secret Service protection to Robert F. Kennedy. And that needs to be used against her in the campaign of Villanueva if she doesn't. Every single Democrat, any of who holds office, any visible office, should be speaking out against this. It is sick.
Now, Randy, do we have a statement from Janice Hahn on what Joe Biden has done to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. by denying him Secret Service protection?
We do.
That's your final warning.
Coming up after the news at 2, we're joined by author and political strategist Dick Morris. So make sure you stick around for that, because if you don't have Morris, you ain't got Dick.
I knew that was coming.
I get to do that at least once every time he's on.
That was your one.
All right. We have been told time and time again by those that run the MTA, don't believe what you see. Don't believe what you hear. The MTA is now clean, on time, and safe. So feel free to ride our trains, buses, and subways anytime you'd like, because you will have an excellent experience.
And then when you talk to the people that actually have to use the system, they say,
you may want to consider not using the Metro.
And that's exactly what Fox 11's Ed Laskos did.
So the last Thursday of every month is the big Metro board meeting, which I was so ready to grab the sound for from today, but they haven't posted it yet, so we might get to that on Monday, because apparently Janice Hahn gives a big shout out to Mike Bonin for coming up with this idea of ambassadors that are now going to be permanent. But in that meeting, they talked...
That's her final warning.
That's your final warning.
But since they haven't posted that sound yet, Fox 11's Ed Laskos wanted to talk to the people that actually ride the trains. If Metro says it's so much safer now and we're doing something about the homeless, what it's really like. You think it's going to be clean?
Absolutely not.
For more, here's the man, the myth, the legend, the Ed.
The Metro Green Line pulling in, and with it, more concern about those who ride the trains nonstop, the homeless, and the safety threat they bring.
They should do something about that. They should make something a little bit safer. Yeah, they have something and they say, oh, you could call or something, but by the time you call them and somebody come, it's like maybe too later.
Charit has her own story.
That's like 5 drops in one. That's like a machine gun fire of drops.
Let's hear Sharik again.
They should do something about that. They should make something a little bit safer. Yeah, they have something and they say, oh, you could call or something, but by the time you call them and somebody come, it's like maybe too later.
Charit.
You know what she sounds like? There was a woman that turned into a drop who was interviewed about a high-speed chase. Do you remember that?
Oh, you mean the classic, one of our absolute favorites.
Get out of my way.
Okay, let's hear her up against the new woman.
They should do something about that. They should make something a little bit safer. Get out of my way.
Could be the same person.
Could be.
They should do something about that. They should make something a little bit safer. Yeah, they have something and they say, oh, you could call or something, but by the time you call them and somebody come, it's like maybe too later.
Also, how do you call when you're on the red line underground?
Does that SOS thing actually work?
Not sure.
Charit has her own stories about being a long time, as she says, scared Metro rider.
She's scared? Do you hear that, Johnny? She's scared.
She sounds it.
You may be frightened, and I know how you feel.
Might be my favorite drop.
Metro rider.
And I know he was homeless, and he came after me, and he was like following me, that he was harassing me. Yeah, so it's like, that's in the daytime, so imagine how I feel in the nighttime.
So we've got homeless people chasing around sexually assaulting women in Long Beach, and also homeless people chasing women around on the trains in broad daylight.
See, that's why you should stay off the trains.
That growing concern now brings a new action plan from the Metro Board of Directors centering on the homeless themselves, especially during those crucial times on the transit system, the late nights and early mornings.
We had 50 deaths on Metro in the first 6 months, and although we don't know the cause for all of those, we can reasonably suspect that majority of those were overdoses.
And hey, look at that. They finally came out with some new numbers, although they're only up to June, and we're at 50 deaths for the year.
I love the caveat. We don't know why all of them died.
Well, and you can't say all of them were overdoses, because we have seen people that got stabbed to death and shot to death on the platforms.
I'd love to see him spin this. I'd love to see Lindsay Horvath explain away all the deaths on the Metro. Well, you know, Randy, we've seen a lot of deaths on the Metro, but not all of these people who died because of drug overdoses or murder. Well, this one last week, for example, his head just fell off.
Quite frankly,
he was getting pretty old.
We had 50 deaths on Metro in the first 6 months, and although we don't know the cause for all of those.
I think the entire number of deaths for the whole year of 2022 was 20. We're at 50 up through June.
Well, if Oakland can brag about cleaning up the most cars that were stolen and set on fire as some sort of accomplishment, maybe Karen Bass will brag about this number.
I couldn't agree with you more. We can reasonably suspect that majority of those were overdoses.
And Metro even targeting one of its own controversial policies, its end-of-the-line sweeps, when everybody is forced off as the trains go out of service for cleaning overnight.
You do not want to live anywhere near an end of the line.
No, you don't. And if they're proposing bringing an end of the line to your community, fight it. Fight it. Fight it.
Long Beach, you're screwed. Chatsworth, you're screwed. Claremont, you're going to be screwed soon.
At that time of night, what we were finding is there were no services and no help for people. And so it was causing problems not only for the community where the end of the line was. And I guess,
what services are we going to offer the rapist that was attacking the woman in broad daylight in downtown Long Beach?
Yeah, how do you keep them happy at the end of the line?
By the end of the lines.
Those end-of-the-line sweeps being blamed by many here in Long Beach for leaving the homeless wandering right through downtown, bringing a surge in crime, especially after this attempted sexual assault right in broad daylight last Friday. The 30-year-old homeless man turned suspected attacker, later arrested. A threat that leaves Metro riders like Charit saying the time for action is now. Action like this. More L.A. County Sheriff patrols, not on the platforms, but walking right through the train cars.
I think it's just talk, you know. I mean, I've heard before that they say they're going to, deal with it, and I haven't seen any action. Get out of my way.
Well, I guess the safety ambassadors aren't impressing her.
No, she didn't have anything to say about the safety ambassadors. And don't you worry, Monday we will have the sound of Janice Hahn talking about how great the ambassadors are and giving a huge shout out to Mike Bonin, of all people, for coming up with this idea.
that's your final warning.
Ugh.
You sound actually disgusted.
I am disgusted.
You may want to consider not using the Metro.
Let's go to Jason in Lancaster. Jason, you're on KABC. Hello.
Howdy, gents. Thanks for having me. So these cities need to be behooved to use Lancaster or the Antelope Valley as a living example of a terminus for the Metro, because it cast out homeless people throughout the ocean of the desert. Excuse the metaphor. Mayors are giving one-way tickets to terminus areas for their homeless people. So please, those that need to, stand up against a terminus in your town. And I'll listen to your response off air.
Haven't had that happen in a while. Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it.
Usually people that say that are people that used to listen to radio in the middle of the night. That's an Art Bell and a George Norrie thing.
I'm guessing, Randy, what he's saying is directed at the people of Claremont.
Yes.
Lancaster, you're the ghost of Christmas future. Claremont, pay close attention.
You don't want Claremont to end up like parts of Lancaster where it is the end of the line, because it's going to be, when you get out of that train station, you don't want to touch anything.
I didn't want to get hepatitis, so I didn't touch anything.
And Claremont, I have some advice for you. If and when you decide to allow the Metro to come to you as the end of the line, do it after I don't have to go there once a week. I park my car on your streets, and I don't want it broken into. I don't want to get harassed when I'm getting an iced tea. I don't want to have people asking me for money when I'm putting gasoline in my car. I want to have a nice, pleasant experience in Claremont. Right now, that's the case. If you choose to do this, you will ruin that. And bye-bye, John. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Jane writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com, and she says this
Get out of my way.
is her absolute favorite drop. She calls her the Barrio Mae West. And based on the story we just did, May's got a sister.
They should do something about that. They should make something a little bit safer. Yeah, they have something and they say, oh, you could call or something, but by the time you call them and somebody come, it's like maybe too later.
We need to invite them down to the studios and have one great big family reunion.
Get out of my way.
All right, we got one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show, and then the weekend is here, right here on Talk Radio 790 KABC.
I didn't want to get hepatitis, so I didn't touch anything.